I'm here with Aubrey Weger, who is a fiddler, multi-instrumentalist, and educator in the Twin Cities. She's a member of the string trio Lady Spruce, contributing on vocals, violin, and banjo, and has also performed with the Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra and many, many classical chamber groups. Thanks so much for joining me, Aubrey, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great. We were chatting just a minute ago about banjo, and I was saying that my kind of very recent obsession is frailing or clawhammer banjo, which I know is a big part of the music you play. And you were showing me an instrument right behind you there that was,
Yes,
I
here
guess,
she
newly
is. I'll give
commissioned.
you a close-up. Yeah, this amazing banjo maker, he's out of Portland. His name is Brooks Maston. So he is just kind of like a one-person banjo making operation. And a friend of mine, do you know Davey Harrison? He's like a amazing instrumentalist and vocalist who is in town, and he has one of his banjos. And we shared Lady Spruce that shared a gig with his group at Warming House last spring, and I got to play his instrument, and it was just like, yeah, just a beautiful, soulful, like resonant, beautiful banjo. So feel very fortunate to have it, and it's definitely brought a lot of new music into my life.
And you were saying that it was kind of custom made to your specs.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's different about it than like your average, bluegrass five-string banjo that you'd find at Guitar Center?
He makes his own parts, so these are all like his handmade brass banjo parts. It also I have this like beautiful decal that he put in for me. It's like I don't know if you can see it very well. It's like a
Yeah.
sun and some clouds.
Oh, wow.
And it's just, I think it's not in tune right now, but very much like, I don't know, I won't try to play it right now because it's like seriously out of tune, but it's just like I think like the sustain of it is so much more than like an average banjo, and it just has like a very like, I don't know, I already used the word resonant, but it's just like very alive and kind of sparkly tone, more so than other banjos that I've played. So I'm just, yeah, I feel very lucky to have her as like a quarantine present to myself.
That's wonderful.
It's important to feel inspired at home these days.
That's a huge thing. Yeah, and we should talk about that too. I was going to ask you, because I've asked a lot of guests here, just kind of what your routine is at the moment, if it's this week or, I know it always changes, but...
Most of my creative energy and, focus is going into teaching these days, which I think is honestly usually true for me. I'm most passionate about teaching and kind of secondarily performing. I love both, but just naturally I feel a lot of joy and purpose in teaching, and these days it's as important or more important than ever to learn creativity and self-awareness and have healthy mechanisms to process hard things that are happening. And so yeah, I think most of my creative energy is going into trying to help facilitate that for my students, and also just kind of in the process of creating some new curriculum focus, and yeah, I don't know. There's like kind of a lot on the horizon for how I'm approaching my teaching, but I have been doing some playing too. I find that like one of the more kind of soothing media for me is classical piano, so I've been doing a lot of that lately. I've been working on this really beautiful piece by Annie Beach called Hermit Thrush at Eve. It's a really beautiful piece. Have you heard it before?
No.
She
I've
was
heard some
commissioned
Amy
by,
Beach, but...
yeah, I can't remember who she was commissioned by, some environmental group, and now I wish that I had it in my brain, but she basically transcribed like birdsong of a hermit thrush and created music around it. There are two, it's like a pair of two pieces, hermit thrush at eve and hermit thrush at morn. So I think the only difference is that it's down an octave, but even like, it's literally the exact pitches, so it's written in the key of G flat, which has all the flats. Which makes it, that much more interesting to learn. But anyway, she's amazing. I really love listening to her music and playing her music, and part of what as I mentioned, part of what I've kind of been thinking about a lot over the past years is how music education, it's a big problem. Music education is like pretty singularly focused on a lot of white men, most of whom are straight and most of whom aren't alive. And I think I studied classical piano my entire life as a kid and in college, and never once do I remember playing like a piece by a female composer apart from like beginning music for kiddos, but like the more advanced repertoire just like is not celebrated in the way that other repertoire is. And it's a very important issue right now that we're as educators coming to terms with the lack of representation in who we teach.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, not just as far as who you are as an educator, but like that's that's how music history was taught to me, in school
For
and
sure.
in college. It was like,
and just like the people who had, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. The people who had the opportunity to learn to compose and who were, able to make a name for themselves at the time were men. And, I think in light of the continuing like racism and, inequalities that exist in our country, especially, now's the time for musicians. It's always the time, but I feel like it's more in focus right now for musicians and for teachers to think about how we're representing who's worthy of study in music, and not like composers of color and artists of color have like tend to be like represented in music education as like supplementary or extracurricular, whereas like the main focus is like the quote greats like Beethoven and Bach and these folks who are like have so much to teach us but are a very small sliver of what's out there and what's inspiring and what's important for students to learn. So I think it's really important that everyone, regardless of who you are, like find what's who's in your circle of influence and how what you're doing with your passions in your career and everything can help create change a little bit at a time. And I think, music education is a really great, really powerful place to start there.
Did you start out on classical piano or did you start with violin?
I started with piano as I think I was 5 or 6, and then I picked up violin in 4th grade, which is when our like school program had started, and kind of always have enjoyed having many irons in the fire musically. I like the process. I tend to be drawn more excited by the process of learning than I am about the process of performing, which I do enjoy performing, but just not as much as I enjoy that process, which I think is part of what draws me to education, because it's really cool to, it feels wonderful to help guide other people in that. But anyway, so I've always been kind of juggling multiple instruments. I played French horn all through my childhood and college too. My main focus since, I've been a grown-up has been violin, and more recently, more focused on like folk fiddle traditions.
I'm also like looking at the camera, but you're down here, so I just got to get used to that.
I know, right?
So, like,
it's that 2020 Zoom life. You just spend all day like looking, like making wrong eye contact with people.
Oh my goodness! Are you so? Just an aside, this whole discussion about Zoom fatigue and I thought it was just like, I don't know. I thought that was just a catchy headline for BuzzFeed articles, but I feel like there's some truth to that in terms of teaching.
Oh my gosh, there's more of a challenge in capturing students' attention, especially when they're the little ones, and I think, in order to have like feel balanced and energized at work in the long run, you have to be receiving as much energy as you're giving, you know what I mean? And like the give and take is pretty, in my experience, like fairly easy when you're with somebody in person, because it's just like energizing to be around a kid who's learning music. There's like nothing cooler. But over a screen, it's like I feel hyper aware all of the time of like what my face looks like, or sometimes I'm like, just because like I want to be portraying the ways in which we can communicate with the students is like so minimal when we're over Zoom. It's just like how do you look, as opposed to like the body language and all that other stuff isn't there. So I feel it's so important for it to like look like an encouraging presence all the time. So I just feel like I have this like smile plastered on my face for like 8 hours a day, or not 8 hours, but whatever, however long I'm teaching, and just like, yeah, it takes a lot more energy and a lot more planning, I think, to like really make sure that kids are engaged for 30 minutes straight over a screen, and to be like an effective teacher. Definitely, it's very different.
Was that a medium that you were using before 2020 to any extent?
No, maybe
Yeah.
like I've done like a couple Skype lessons in my life, but nothing in any way regular. So it's been an adjustment for sure.
I know. So
Like,
like
thank God we
early
have
on,
it, but
yeah. How do you feel like you're adjusting to doing that and to kind of reorganizing your teaching materials around that?
I think actually I'm in a pretty good groove right now. I feel much better than I did in the beginning. I think I've kind of gotten used to what I need to do in order to feel successful, and I don't feel quite as scrambly about it. I feel like I know I'm kind of in a groove, and I know what works and what doesn't. There's certainly like, I mean, I'm sure, as you know, the hardest thing is, I think, like the thing I miss most is just being able to play duets and like accompany students effectively, which anyone who's tried to like play music with someone over Zoom knows there's always like a half-second delay, so it's just not there's ways to kind of like hack your way around it, but it's not in any way the same or as effective, which is, I haven't figured out, maybe you have ideas, I haven't figured out how to like fill that gap in education right now. But apart from that, I think I have a pretty solid rhythm right now. I just moved into a new house, which I'm very excited about because I have a backyard. So at least my violin students, I'm going to start having some folks over to like have masks on and do some backyard lessons while the weather's still nice. Piano doesn't work as well because, it's a piano. People can't really bring their own. So I don't, it's not really good to have people sharing an instrument, but with violin, it's, doable to do an outdoor thingy. But that was just about a week ago that I moved. So
Oh my
it's fun to
goodness.
get settled in and have my own like little music room and being able to play music whenever I want and not have to like worry about neighbors.
So when you were teaching in studio in-person lessons, where was that, or what school do you teach from?
I teach at the Music Lab in South Minneapolis, and I teach at Sarah Jane's Music School in Northeast. So I have about 45 right now, violin, viola, piano students. I do a lot of different genres. I really like doing, obviously, like, or as I said, my main focus with my performance right now is fiddle, fiddle styles. So I incorporate that into my curriculum a lot. But I have students who are interested in pop music, students who are interested more in classical, students who are interested in like some blues stuff. So I have just kind of a big spectrum, which I really love. It's one of my favorite aspects of teaching is just kind of helping folks find like what their interests are and helping them develop those. And also it keeps me fresh as a musician too, because I feel like it's always helping me learn new learn new music and learn new styles and learn new ways of playing. Some people tend to focus more. Some people are like more wired toward like being a visual learner or to being toward being an auditory learner. So it really depends on the student. I personally never learned how to play by ear until the past several years. Like it was just not part of my experience in lessons growing up and when I was studying in college and everything. It was just like very kind of one track classical. Very comfortable in front of a sheet of music and very extremely uncomfortable not in front of one. And it wasn't until, well, I'm getting a little sidetracked, but my goal for my students is for them to be able to be comfortable in both. So I try to incorporate aspects of learning by ear and aspects of learning by sight, and hopefully in the long run that will help them be more well-rounded and more ready to play in different types of genres. Yeah.
Do you teach any ensemble classes like virtually at the moment, where you have to
Not
edit it afterwards?
No. I have done a few like tried to edit duets together with students. It's maybe I just haven't like found that perfect app yet, or maybe I don't know. It's really challenging. But
Yeah.
I do have a few students who like sent me a video of them like getting together at like a park and playing, and I have a few like sets of siblings or like students who like have parents or family members that play that like do little ensemble jams with them. But right now I'm not doing any regular group things. I do like performances on Zoom, like recitals, where I have like 10 or 15 kids in a room and everyone takes turn, or in a Zoom room and everyone takes turns playing their solo, which is fun and works well, and it's at least a way for them to stay connected and have an experience of performing, even if it's not for like a in-person audience.
You did a super cool video. I think it was this year because it was. You said it was a socially distanced video with your trio, Lady Spruce, and this was for the Tiny Desk concert.
Oh yeah,
which was awesome. And was that it was a tune called "Are You Water"?
You Are Water, yeah.
You Are Water, excuse me.
Yep.
Is that an original song?
Yeah, that's a tune I wrote kind of progressively over the past couple years. I wrote it originally as a poem. Like I think it was last summer actually when I was in Washington at a festival there, and then just kind of like wrote a cool kind of bluesy banjo riff around it, and I'm really proud of that arrangement. I think it turned out really good. Fortunately we had arranged it before all of everything closed down, so we we had a good solid arrangement, that we were able to. I was not responsible for putting the video together. I think Isabel and Julia did most of that, but we just recorded it, like layered it on GarageBand, and then put like one of those like splicey video apps to put it together. So I think it turned out pretty well considering we were doing it from 3 different living rooms. But yeah, it's a cool tune. I'm happy with how that one turned out.
I was going to ask like how you were as a group rehearsing and collaborating at the moment. Is it all over video, or have you been able to get together live in any capacity?
Yeah, we've gotten together just like in each other's backyards a handful of times, and I think we're gonna. A few of us have been out of town this summer, so this August, this month, whatever it is. So we're gonna do some more of that, and we did one gig outside of, where was it? Harriet Brasserie in Linden Hills. A couple weeks ago, which was the first time we've played together really for the first time we've done a gig together since all this went down, and that was really fun. I mean, we're doing what we can. It's hard for everybody right now. We had some good momentum going. We were planning on recording our first album this summer, which of course hasn't happened. And I think like getting together, well, I mean, there's good things about it too. We've been really focused on more instrumental stuff since like singing is not as safe right now. So, which I really miss, because we had some great vocal harmony stuff going on, and we were on a really good track there, which we'll get back to eventually, I'm sure. But so we've really just been like learning some new fiddle tunes, working on we tend to put together really complicated and fun arrangements of tunes, whether that's like originals or like we have a couple like classic rock tunes that we've arranged, and like just fiddle standards, different fiddle tunes from around the world. But we tend to put together like the good ex-classical musicians we are, a very specific arrangement and like stick to it, but we're all kind of individually building our skills of like jamming and soloing and being more courageous with being more improvisatory and in the moment, which I think this will be a good opportunity for us to continue, building those skills together as instrumentalists. And we're trying to figure out if maybe there's a way we can safely record an EP this fall. So stay tuned. I'm not sure if that will be able to happen or not, but I don't know, maybe now's the time if it's going to be worse this winter. But yeah, I mean, it's wonderful to still be able to play together in any format. But we'll look forward to being able to do all the things we used to do someday.
Someday, Yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure when that's going to be. It is such a cool instrumentation, and it seems like you kind of juggle that tune to tune.
We're pretty methodical about creating like kind of diversity in the textures that we build, and how you can make, like, our primary instruments are fiddle, cello. So how you can create like all of the elements of like a typical instrumentation in like a bluegrassy kind of band, like your bass line and your kind of guitar rhythm, or like the rhythm guitar, and like a lead solo and like some percussion in there. So we try to like be really purposeful about making it interesting and diverse, and how we like build momentum within a tune, and use our instruments in different fun ways. So that's been wonderful, because I think we all bring different areas of expertise to the table. So I think we've all grown and learned from each other, which is really wonderful. And it's a unique experience, I think, to be in a group like this, where we all are, equally adept in our instruments, and can challenge each other, and help each other learn, and introduce each other to like new ideas and new stuff. So new music.
You mentioned that all three of you are kind of ex-classical musicians.
Yeah.
How did you get connected in the first place? Was it through music school or elsewhere?
Oh, just Facebook. We met on a Facebook group, and I think, actually, I'm not sure how Julia and Isabel met. They might have also met the same way, but I think I had posted something like I was looking for folks to play with, and Julia responded to it, and then we just kind of slowly started getting together, casually, and then more frequently, and over the past couple years.
Yeah, I think the last time I saw the three of you perform, or any of you in person for that matter, was the state fair, the Minnesota State Fair last year.
Yeah.
And you had, and I think I read after that you won third place in I don't know if it was the bluegrass or fiddle.
Yeah, it was the Minnesota Bluegrass and Old Time Music Association,
That's
MBATMA.
awesome.
Wow, did I actually I think I just nailed that acronym. But yeah, it was very fun. Yeah, we did an arrangement of I've Just Seen a Face, which we're like pretty happy about. Like, that arrangement turned out really well. It was really fun. It was our first introduction to that organization, and then we got to. They asked us back to play at their winter weekend, which was really fun. We got to open for Michael Cleveland, and that was who just won like a Grammy for Best New Bluegrass Album. So that was like a huge honor. We got to open for him. He's amazing. If you haven't checked him out, like, do it. He's like on another plane. I don't know. That was like the second weekend in March, which was right when everything was shutting down. So like, in retrospect, maybe it was not the best. Like a big crowded indoors enclosed space, and everybody's like singing together, and but here we are. I didn't hear about anyone getting sick at that weekend, so hopefully everyone was fine. But It was really fun to be able to do that, and really cool to be able to see him live.
Do you have siblings who are musicians?
Yes,
or?
I have a brother who's a musician. These days, I haven't heard what he's been up to these days. He plays guitar. He's really into metal genres and other things. But yeah, he's a really gifted musician. My parents are both. We all play. I grew up in like a small town in South Dakota, and we all played in like the Huron Symphony Orchestra together growing up, which is like a really wholesome memory. So we all played instruments, and was really lucky to grow up in a really supportive musical family.
Yeah, not a lot of people that I know could say that they grew up playing in a symphony orchestra with their parents.
Yeah,
their siblings. It's super cool. You list a number of instruments that you either teach lessons on or have studied in some capacity, ranging from viola to banjo, obviously, which we can talk more about, to even classical sitar.
Well, I think after college was when I moved up here. That was like 2008. And for a number of reasons, I progressively got very burnt out of playing music, and specifically, I think classical music just kind of stopped speaking to me in the way that it had before. And for several years, I didn't really play music at all. I was doing case management for homeless folks for about 5 years, and also just like really struggling with some untreated severe depression. which for me made it really hard to be motivated to do basically anything. And so for a long time there, I didn't do anything or musically. And then I started, I don't remember what sparked it, but probably George Harrison. I don't remember what exactly sparked it, but I just like sitar is a very cool instrument and like a big mystery, you know. And so I just like Googled it and found this really amazing teacher, David Whetstone, who lives in Uptown. So I just kind of like sent him an email out of the blue and I was like, hey, you know, I don't have a sitar or any experience, but do you want to teach me? And he was like, sure, I have a sitar for you. So I, for about 2 years there, studied pretty intensely with him, and it was my first exposure to music that was learned by ear. Because as I said, I pretty much only did classical music in a very like traditional way, like learn it from the page, don't even listen to it, just like learn it from the page, you know, that's it. And so that was my first exposure to having an entire discipline of music that like literally does not have, like it's not even available. Written music is not even available. And it's in a completely foreign tonal language. Like Indian classical music is its own amazing long tradition, you know, longer than Western music, and it's incredible. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it was like extremely humbling because it's just, you know, it's like learning a language, you know, like you're immersed in a thing and you don't really know what people are saying, but you're trying to copy it. Every little thing took like a great deal of work. And then, which was really, I mean, rewarding and like therapeutic at the time. And then, after having done that for a few years, I ended up at like, just kind of on a whim, like at a fiddle festival in Montana with a friend of mine who was like going on a road trip there. And so that was my first time really cracking open my violin case for a long time. And it was like, you know, and interestingly, like very similar in that, like, the way that music is learned is just like student to teacher, passed down by ear, like here's a little bit of this piece, play it back to me. And the difference between playing sitar, where like every little thing was like such a huge effort, to learning fiddle, where I have all of these like years and years of technique built up that are just like there for me, that I can just be like do 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 and like play it, and you know, there it is. It was like a sense of kind of ease and joy in it, like coming back to this instrument that I had loved for so long, and like experiencing it in a completely different way, in a much more simple way, was just really, really wonderful. And that's how I ended up also at the time I was finally getting like treatment for my like mental health stuff that was going on, and I found a medication that works, and so I was able to have a lot more like clarity and ease in, you know, playing music, which is a vulnerable and hard thing to do anyway, let alone when you're having health struggles like that. Mm-hmm. So so around that time I like ended up quitting, like I left my job doing case management for that I had been doing for 5 years or so, and started teaching again, which I would like surprised myself to find was amazing and like the best fit possible. And here we are. That was like maybe, I think it's been around 4 or 5 years now. So I've been studying fiddle music since then, and like learning more stuff, and picked up the old banjo. I had a different banjo before, but picked up the banjo gradually over the past like 10 years or so, I guess.
You know, I'm glad that like you found a treatment or a medication that worked for you, because it seems like that's still such a kind of a crapshoot, depending on which direction you go. Yeah. Yep. I'm kind of glad that we're just beginning to get rid of that old model of kind of romanticizing mental illness as just part of the creative process for musicians and artists.
Yes.
Because we're kind of still stuck with the baggage of that mindset.
Yeah, there's like definitely an idea floating around out there that like you make the best art when you're sad, or you make the best art when like things are going wrong or whatever, which sometimes really great art can come out of that, but also like it's important to take care of yourself. And I think for them, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak like for other people, but I think my experience with when I have like imbalance in my mental health is that like I have literally no motivation to do anything creative, and I don't know. And even if I don't know. It's very important. It's very important to
Yep.
continue to build comfort and normalcy around seeking help for that kind of thing.
And I think now probably that discussion is more important than ever, just because everybody is already experiencing, the isolation and anxiety and sense of loss that accompanies this whole pandemic.
Yes, it's hard to escape your stuff when you like literally are just in your own company all of the time.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. Here's a roommate that is actually the worst, most toxic person you could ever imagine. It's also inside your brain. Enjoy living with. Enjoy living
fun with that.
24 hours a day.
Yeah, for sure.
Lady Spruce also has a line of merchandise, which I think I saw on Instagram, which features if I described this correctly, a cat in kind of a punk rock vibe as the band mascot, and I only later learned that this is your cat, right? Puppy?
Oh yeah, it's
right?
very important. Yes, here she is. She's like, this is her, I don't know if you can see because she's kind of backlit, but this is her like favorite wicker basket.
Love it.
There she is. My brother's Boo made or I think she purchased like a denim jacket for a small dog, and then she sewed one of our we have like these little logo patches. She like sewed one of the patches on it, and so now Puppy has this like little like denim, frayed Lady Spruce outfit. So my friend Eric Jerdingen, who's an amazing artist, created that image for us of Puppy wearing her Lady Spruce swag.
It's awesome. It's fabulous. Yeah.
Thank you. I agree. It turned out extremely well.
Everybody should go out and buy Lady Spruce merch, and you'll know
yes,
what I'm talking
indeed.
about.
We got plenty of shirts.
Yeah. I just kind of wanted to ask about, your thoughts on where you're finding inspiration these days, given the isolation and everything we're processing.
If I'm being honest, I don't feel particularly inspired. Just like, honest answer. I do feel inspired by teaching, as I said. And I feel inspired by... Well, okay, so I think it's like it is and should be, hopefully for all of us white folks, like a time of sitting back and learning. And I think that like I've been trying to be intentional about doing that, and like I don't know, like do you know who Rhiannon Giddens is?
Banjo player, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she plays like with the
Amazing.
Carolina Chocolate Drops. That's her like more, I think most people, or people have heard of her, many were introduced to her through that. She was like a classically trained opera singer, and then eventually got into banjo and fiddle, and just like is an incredible folk musician. She's a Black woman, and I don't know. I was listening to a talk that she gave at some point about just like the I think it's called like the hidden history of the Black banjo or something like that, which I'll send to you if you want to include it whenever you like post this. But she's just talking about how just like things I had no idea about. Like I knew that the banjo originated in West Africa, but the way that it was brought here was brought here by enslaved people. And like it was brought to, what she talks about in that talk is that it was brought originally to the Caribbean, which is where a lot of the slave trade stuff was going on, and eventually up to like the American South. And for a long time, it was considered to be like an instrument that slaves played, and that was it. And then like the way that it first became introduced to white culture was through like white people wearing blackface, playing banjos. And then eventually kind of became appropriated into white culture, and now people just think of it as like an instrument that originated with like white people in Appalachia, which is not true. And like no one's talking about this, I didn't know it until like very recently, and I think God, it's just like I think it like feel like it's not. it's not fun to like learn these things, because it's like, you know, just peeling back another painful layer of the onion. And like as a white person, of course, it's like a lot less painful for me than it is for people of color who are, you know, obviously have been taken advantage of all this time. And I don't know, I think like if there's something that I feel like an area of growth for me right now, it's just like being educated about, you know, things that we have kind of been blind to, or chosen to be ignorant about, or have been ignorant about for whatever reason. I also I'm taking an online class with Chinoa Amalu is her name. She's a Black Suzuki educator, and I'm not sure if she's specifically a Suzuki teacher, but anyway, she's a violin teacher, who put together a course that's like introduction to Black artists and Black composers, like specifically in classical music. So I've been taking that class, and like, you know, just there's like no end to ways in which we have ignored and overlooked people of color throughout the years. And like, I don't know, I think it's important for all of us to be like extremely vigilant about how we're giving credit, first of all, to people of color who have like not been giving credit over all these years, but also like just stepping back and not being the person who's being heard all the time. I don't have like a lot of good answers about that, but I think it's just like something that's been on my mind a lot over the past months, and hopefully it's on a lot of people's minds. And I don't know if there's like any centralized group of musicians that's like organizing around this, but maybe there should be. I don't know. Or at least like some kind of, you know, I don't know, like I'll just say, not to, you know, talk forever, but one thing that I feel really inspired by just in general as an educator is, I don't know if do you know very much about like the history or like of Suzuki's life?
No, really.
You know who, like, so
nothing.
Suzuki, for folks who don't know, is like a like world famous educator who created like the Suzuki method of violin teaching, or violin learning, whatever. But Suzuki violin method, which is also now branched out into lots of other instruments as well. But he was creating his method in like the aftermath of World War II in Japan. Violin at the time that he was, you know, growing up in Japan was not like a instrument that was like well known in Japan. It wasn't like played very much there, and he became like just really enamored with it and moved to Germany for a while and like, you know, learned violin, and then came back and started this came back to Japan and started a violin school there. And then World War II happened, and like many of his students lost their entire families in the war, or like, you know, I think he actually adopted one of his students. Like just incredible suffering happening there. And he's a kind of like motivating idea behind this like violin school that he was creating was that he wanted to create a more compassionate, and he wanted to build character in his students to like create a better world. It wasn't like he wanted to create prodigies. He wanted to like build character, and like just like the fact that kind of like social justice, or that like kind of nurturing mindset is at the heart of his method, which is now like, you know, everywhere. I think it's just like very telling and very, you know, it's a example of how we can use, you know, the arts to create equity and create like a voice for things that need a voice. And hopefully, you know, through teaching kiddos, we can infuse that with those, you know, that kind of like compassionate lens, and that like building something deeper than just like musical technical skill, you know, building like a, you know, self-aware children. Which is like, now I'm feeling inspired talking about this. That's inspiring.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know any of that about Suzuki's life.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Admit,
just
I
like,
was
yeah, look, like read, if you just, gosh, I can't remember, I can send you resources, but there's like what's the name? He has like there's like a really quick short book that like folks read when they take his training. That's just like kind of about his history. I can link it to you, but it's like incredible to learn about him. And he lived for a long time. I think he died in the 90s, but he was just like teaching, just an amazing pedagogue who was just teaching little kiddos his entire life, and making waves, creating change through music.
That's really inspiring. I feel like I've had a lot of friends go kind of through the similar thought of like, okay, I'm just practicing my instrumental technique in this very isolated way, and does that relate in any form to social justice and to kind of helping the needs of other people? But I'm glad to see, like, no, that it totally does, and there are many discussions around that.
It seems like it has to be just about, like, considering who's in your sphere of influence and how you can be a voice for progress within that sphere, which might be, like, directly related to musical technique, or it might just be, like, other people who happen to be musicians, and you, like, talk to them. I think it can be simpler than we think. And also just, like, listen to people of color,
Right.
Maybe don't do the talking sometimes.
Yep. And I also just want to go back to the banjo discussion that or the talk that you were discussing earlier, because I think that instrument is such a fascinating microcosm of like the history of slavery and white supremacy, and like I don't quite know another instrument that's in the popular vocabulary that has all of those kind of elements built into it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that even the clawhammer banjo technique that everybody uses for old time music is like a direct descendant of this kind of West African instrument, and the technique and everything in the right hand. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the same.
I think it's interesting because, like, the bluegrass and old time communities tend to be like extremely white. And, as with so many traditions, it's become that way. But like I think when people think about protest singers or protest folk music, they think about like Bob Dylan or Woody Guthrie, right, or those folks who drew their inspiration from like Odetta and like Ma Rainey and these like incredible Black like activist artists. So I think like folk music at its roots is really powerful in like creating story and creating like unification and like a voice around these issues. And also it tends to be that like the people who are listened to the most are white folks, so I don't know if that like directly answers your question, but I think like there's definitely a lot of activism in the folk world, and there's a lot of probably like the opposite of that in the folk world too, because it's a lot of the like fiddle traditions tend to be, I mean, one of the beautiful things about it is that it's like something that appeals to everybody, but there's also a lot of like extreme conservatism in those circles too.
I was listening to Brene Brown in one of her new podcast episodes, and she's kind of talking about like, because she does a lot of research and writing about shame as an emotion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For those of you who don't know. And anyway, she was talking about the shame that you experience in kind of being called out or criticized in some way, that like, basically saying that that's different than somebody actively shaming you for some component of yourself or your identity. Like, that's a different thing. You experiencing shame, somebody has pointed something out to you. That's your journey. That's not on.
It's not that they're else. Like doing something to you.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just, it's a hard discussion to have because the language is changing, and because it's so emotionally raw, but I think it's important, whether it's through music or Facebook or wherever that we're discussing.
Through voting also.
Yeah. Yep. And just an FYI out there, I don't know if you voted during the primary in person, or if you mailed in, or what you did. I
voted in person. It was actually very easy. Hopefully the presidential election will be as easy, but it was I voted at the Powderhorn Park Rec Center, and it was like in and out in 3 minutes. It was a huge like open space. It was very like they were just like spraying everyone with hand sanitizer. I mean, like not like on your hands, not just like a mist that you walk through, which would actually be kind of nice.
That would be kind of nice
but
too,
also
yeah.
there's a lot of buzz about what's going on with the postal service, which is like extremely scary. But it is possible to request a mail-in ballot and then drop it off if you're concerned about mailing it and then it not getting delivered or whatever. So there's, maybe we can just send all the, post all the links about that. But definitely, everybody vote, please.
Important. Yeah, we need it. I will say that the dropping off process for a mail-in ballot was so easy, and it was like
outdoors, I haven't done it that way before, but I probably will do it this time around.
It just seemed like there's no excuse. Like it's so easy. It's maybe in other states there are a lot of other hurdles to jump through. Is there any like one activity or thing that you're really looking forward to the most after the pandemic is lifted?
Oh my God, just like singing with people. That's it. I like miss singing with people so much. But both like with my students and with just like other musicians. Yeah. Well, one thing that I have been enjoying doing, or like at least before the pandemic started, was like using my violin as like an accompaniment for my voice. So that's like something I can do by myself. But I was just like, jamming this thing yesterday and singing, and I was like, man, this is the first time I've like really used my voice to its full capacity, probably like in months and months. I don't know. Like I sing little things with my lessons on Zoom or whatever, but yeah.
And
that's what I'm probably looking forward to the most.
Yeah, for sure. Where can people go online to find your latest videos and recordings and more about you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Aubrey Weger Music, and Lady Spruce, also on Facebook and Instagram, Lady Spruce Music. So both of those, you can find me there. Yeah.
Well, Aubrey, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to chat. This was super fun.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.